Ordinals, what are they? Are they just NFTs in disguise? And why should we care about them? This is a quick guide for anyone looking to learn the basics of ordinals. Most likely, you'd be coming at this knowing the world of Ethereum NFTs and looking to understand the differences, or you might be looking for that next step of wanting to know where the tools and the resources are and play with them all for yourself. Either way, it's the hot topic of Web3 right now, and I'm going to include a bunch of links in the video description to help you get started on your own ordinals journey. So, the intro, let's just get right into it and start with the fundamentals. Ordinals are a way to inscribe digital content onto the Bitcoin blockchain. That is the simplest definition, and if you only take one thing away from this video, remember that. It's all driven by Ordinals theory, which allows us to identify and track the smallest unit of currency of Bitcoin, the atomic unit, which is called a Satoshi or a sat. There are 100 million sats that make up one Bitcoin, and each sat is numbered based on the order of mining. And that is the key to understanding this. Each Satoshi can be inscribed with its own data, like a JPEG, for example. And suddenly what was previously a fungible sat, in other words, one sat is exactly the same as the next, we now have a non-fungible unit of currency with some unique data attached to it. That combination of a sat plus data is an ordinal. And you can store this and transact it using a Bitcoin wallet. So this is a big difference when comparing with NFTs on Ethereum. On ETH, we have ERC-721, the token standard for creating non-fungible tokens in contracts, and 1155 as well for multi-tokens. But on Bitcoin, we're inscribing the data directly to the currency on-chain. Most Ethereum collections also point to are held off-chain, some experiment on-chain, but the vast majority are stored on cloud servers like IPFS. At this point, it's well worth noting that NFTs have been on Bitcoin and been possible for some time thanks to layer 2 solutions like the Stacks blockchain. And there are thriving communities there already, such as Megapont, which is the blue chip for Stacks. But this is the first layer 1 non-fungible development for Bitcoin, which is why there's so much excitement surrounding it. And that's also having a nice cascading effect on Stacks as well. But we'll deal with that in a moment. So how do I buy and sell ordinals if I'm interested and I want to get involved? So we're very early and in the very early stages of tool development for Bitcoin ordinals, but the progress being made here is rapid and updating almost on a daily basis. The thing that you're going to need, and the key thing to note, is that you're going to need a Bitcoin wallet, which is going to take many of you away from MetaMask for the very first time. The good news is there are several intuitive replacements that will take very little getting used to. The first of these is Hero. And again, I'll link this in the video description. Hero provides support for Bitcoin as well as Stacks, and now Ordinals as well. It's a desktop application and browser extension only, so no mobile support, but it does have a superb UI and is open source if you're into supporting that sort of thing. Setup's very simple. Again, just like MetaMask with an Ethereum wallet, it's going to give you a seed phrase, and you'll need to write that down. Once completed, you'll get given 3 addresses in the same wallet. A Bitcoin address for buying and selling Bitcoin, unsurprisingly. A different address for Stacks in case you want the full L2 experience, and an Ordinals address for sending and receiving inscriptions. And from there, within Hero itself, you'll be able to fund your wallet with Bitcoin via a number of different methods, or you can just transfer your BTC from a central exchange like a Coinbase or Binance to your new BTC wallet address. Just whatever you're most comfortable doing, really. Then the next one is Xverse, which is very similar to Hero. Not open source, but this one does have a mobile app. So this one edges it for me, probably in terms of being a more flexible tool for more people to use. Again, the process here for buying BTC or transferring ordinals is very, very similar to Hero, and I can highly recommend either, to be honest. There are many other wallets that provide the same support for ordinals, but in most cases, I wouldn't need to recommend them to you unless you were an advanced user looking for additional features Or let's say, for example, you're a dev who's very comfortable in seeing more information on screen, in which case something like Sparrow springs to mind. But in our cases, ETH degens stick to Hero or Xverse, and you can't go wrong. Now, on to inscriptions. As for how you actually inscribe sats, it's far easier to do this now we've got tools like Gamma's no-code inscription service. You can very simply inscribe one image or a bulk of images, just upload the images and then pay the according fee in Bitcoin. As you can see here, very simple. Just drag and drop your images into your window and then pay a fee in Bitcoin. Job done. In the earlier days, you would have had to have mined them using your own nodes. So we really are in the early phases of making this technology very accessible to all, which is why we're very likely to see an explosion in the number of inscriptions in the next few months. And then in terms of marketplaces, staying on Gamma, they're very soon to be launching their own Layer 1 Ordinals marketplace. The rumors are that's coming very soon, later this month, in the time of me saying this, which is currently March 2023, potentially early April 2023, which will, again, most likely set the standard. They already have the leading Stacks Layer 2 marketplace, and it's very hard to beat their interface for look and feel. So clean, so simple, as you can see. For the meantime, if you were planning on trading between now and then, you'd be likely using something like ordinalswallet.com, but I would expect that to be a temporary measure personally as you wait for Gamma to launch. Now, a bunch of collections are going about it differently, making life easier in some respects by taking Bitcoin Ordinals and wrapping them in a vault that can then be traded on other chains like Ethereum. So here we've got companies like Emblem Vault who are giving us access to Ethereum marketplaces and liquidity. But ultimately, we're not actually trading an ETH NFT here, but access to the private keys of the ordinal, which you can then send to your own Bitcoin wallet at a later date. Megapunks again, Megapunks by Megapont is the most famous version of this approach. They actually minted the full 10K collection initially on ETH as NFTs, which was then tradable for a few days before freezing. So the freeze means you couldn't buy, sell, or transfer, and that kicked off a process of creating an ETH soulbound token, which is the owner's proof of purchase of the Bitcoin ordinal, which they then inscribed. And then by default, those ordinals were sent to Emblem Vault on Ethereum, which can then be traded again. And you can now see them on OpenSea here. So some have gone through ETH initially as a means of creating familiarity and an immediate liquidity, at least initially anyway, as we wait for the Layer 1 Bitcoin toolmakers to ship. The trade-off then is that the process of minting the vaults on Ethereum carries new and, let's be honest, potentially intimidating steps for ETH degens that won't have seen them before. And that sort of complexity does put some people off. So it is worth considering the trade-offs when you're getting into staying on Ethereum versus biting the bullet and going for that Bitcoin wallet and going for the full experience of a Layer 1 marketplace. As you can see, the vaults, though, can be bought and sold on OpenSea. Blur has them blocked as it stands, I believe. And then there's ordinals.market. And this is slightly better in some respects than OpenSea in that it's pulling in the listings from OS anyway, but it's then got the metadata at a collection level, so making the traits much easier to search again, just like you would experience on OpenSea, rather than everything from Emblem Vault being stuck together. And it's more difficult to search by collection and then by metadata traits within that. So generally, I would recommend ordinals.market, but there is one thing to note, that if you list on OpenSea, ordinals.market will pull through the listing. But if you just list on ordinals.market, you won't get the reverse. You won't be displayed as a listing on OpenSea. So it is worth noting that. And then finally, in terms of notable collections, it's really early days for that. Many of you will have seen Yuga Labs' first ordinals via the 12-fold art collection, which was an auction. And I've just mentioned Megapunks, of course, which is the first original art 10K ordinals collection, but not the very first 10K, which goes to Bitcoin Punks, which are a direct port of the original ETH CryptoPunks, all 10K replicated the same, but with one twist in that the background is the Bitcoin orange and sold as ordinals. There are also ordinal punks, which are CryptoPunks inspired, but these are new images. There's only 100 of them, but they are interesting in that they were among some of the very first images inscribed on Bitcoin. So that if you look at them, the inscription IDs range from 407 to 642. There was an initial gold rush to find value by claiming the lowest numbered inscriptions, and many believe in a future where there's going to be very high demand for 3-digit, 4, 5-digit inscriptions, irrespective of the image attached to them. And then, that's already playing out in its early runnings with the 10 Bitcoin floor price, as you can see here on Ordinal Punks. On the other hand, there's an emerging theory that it might be more desirable to own inscriptions of any old ID number, but actually on the oldest possible sats and blocks on Bitcoin. So in other words, if you can inscribe a sat from an old 2009 block that was mined by one of the OGs like Satoshi himself or Hal Finney, that might have more historic appeal and therefore more value than, say, inscription 998. Megapunks have 511 such inscriptions from their 10K collection on an old 2009 block. Look, all I will say is this. Be careful of investing in what I would call modern archaeology here. We're just weeks into something that will only show its true value many years down the line. And look, we've already got two competing narratives. Just know that when betting on a 2-horse race, there's a chance that neither horse finishes. Who knows? It could be a dead heat, or both could win. There could be room for either or both theories to win out. But that's how I would personally think about the historical thesis stuff. Speculate with caution because we just can't be sure yet. And that's about it for this video. There are many more technical guides out there to get under the hood of Ordinals theory, and I'll point to some of that in the description links. But if you've got any questions, either drop them in the comments below, find me on Twitter at CheadleNFT, or you can hop into the Weirdos Discord and fire away in there. See you next time.